Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So, guys, you do recognize my voice now. It is always Rosie here. And as I've said many times, this is just a group of students and young professionals who are very interested in technology. And yes, it's regulation. So, today I am joined by the non-boss boss, Giacomo. Hi, Giacomo.
Hello, Rosie. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you because today is a very special day because we never get a second chance in life. I think this is a, a very important thing to live on. But we did get a second chance today. We got a second chance to talk to our great friend, Isabel Barberà. Hello, Isabel.
Hi.
It's so great to see you. And I'm sorry for the problems that we've had in recording this interview. It's a pleasure to have you here again. Our listeners don't know it, but this one is going to be even better than the first one, I can assure you. So I guess our listeners will know your name already, but I would like for you to tell them who you are and, of course, what you've been doing so far and how, you imagine this amazing path for your life that led you to this incredible new position, I'm told.
Yeah, well, will be from tomorrow, so not yet. So maybe for the ones that don't know, I will start tomorrow working by the Dutch AI supervisor, the Dutch GPA, and yeah, it has been a really long journey, especially because for the last 10 years I've been as an entrepreneur. So I had my own company, and you asked about the journey. Yeah, I think if I understand, most of you have kind of a legal background, and that's not my case. Well, after many years, I decided to study an LLM in digital technology, but the thing is that I studied many years ago linguistics and computational linguistics, and that is kind of a mix. It's technical, but it's not like a super technical study. So I think with that you can already see that I loved both sides, not only the technology side. And from there, I moved into more technical fields, and especially software development, a lot of cybersecurity, privacy engineering. Later with the years, I decided to study law, and I think it has come a bit. I'm a really curious person, so I think that the cybersecurity part and know how technology works has been for me like the foundation of in my career. But I'm also really a person that I give a lot of importance to the protection of vulnerable people. I have also children. I have a family. For me, it's something really important. So just to summarize, I would say that given the importance that I give to, in general, fundamental rights, it made for me really sense to kind of broaden my scope and not focusing only on technology, but looking further than that. Of course, it's also something that I've seen often in my own work, that I always like to take care of much more. Like, I don't know, we are doing a data migration, but can we really do this? And are we doing it properly? And is people informed? I don't know, always busy with all these concepts. So I think for me was a natural way of moving into that direction. Yeah, I've been involved in the field of AI also really long. I think already when I was working, I mentioned before, I had my own company for 10 years, but before that I worked also 10 years for IBM. So already there we have these big data projects, and later when I was entrepreneur, I also was involved in a lot of these projects, some of them quite sensitive, and like that, yeah, for me has been this normal transition. I must say what I like of the field of AI is that it never stops. I mean, I think you see it also now also from the legal side. There's always something new happening, and that for somebody like me that I like learning so much and I'm so curious, it's fascinating. So especially, I know from the legal side a lot of things happen, but from the technical side, it's especially the side that I get more fascinated reading the different papers and all the things that appear. So I don't know if with that more or less I put you in track of my background.
Let's start from something that we have seen everywhere on LinkedIn. The report that was published in April for the EDPB entitled AI Privacy Risk and Mitigation of Large Language Models. Can you talk a little bit about it and try to explain to us what it's about.
Yeah, in fact, this is a report from the European Data Protection Board, like you mentioned. It was an assignment from the Croatian DPA. So I don't know, for the ones of you that don't know, I mean, I've been, and I say I've been because now in my new role, that's not something I will be doing anymore. But as part of the pool of support pool of experts from the EDPB, you can get assignments from different DPAs, and this was one of the assignments that I had to do. And it came, in fact, in a really good time because I still remember I was at that time, one of the days I got a bit frustrated. I don't know, some comments I saw in LinkedIn, and especially from a legal perspective, that I think, oh, but we need to really understand how the technology works. Because if we don't understand that, we really cannot give proper advice or really interpret the regulation to find the alignment between their interpretation of regulation and how the technology works. So after that frustration, I still remember, because it was the day before that I was a bit angry, commented to somebody, and then the next day I got this assignment. This is really the right moment, the opportunity to make clear, how things are working from especially from a risk perspective. So yeah, this document, I mean, the assignment was to especially to focus the document on how developers and users of LLMs can identify risks, how can they implement risk management, and again, privacy risk management, and how can they mitigate most of these risks. And again, there's no answer to everything because these are really emerging technologies, so things keep changing. But most of risks and non-mitigation measures was my intention to add to this report. And so as you can see, and it's also mentioned in the beginning, it's mostly, though it's a privacy risk management, but it's not a guidance to how to perform a GDPR, Article 35, but it's mostly focused on Article 32 and security measures, and then it goes into the whole process of risk management, and eventually the main goal is how to apply that or use that as a support of a DPA process, just to put it like that. So it has to be clear that this report is not pretending to be a substitution of a DPA, but more of the process that eventually you need to go through to identify and most of them technical risks. Though in the report you see that there's also other type of risks, but it's mostly the ones related to Article 32 from the GDPR. And when I did this report, I also tried to align it with the AI Act and also with the work that we are doing in standardization. I didn't mention it during the introduction, but I'm also contributing. I'm one of the contributors to the European AI standardization, especially the one of AI risk management and cybersecurity. And of course, I mean, part of the work we do there is still confidential until it will be made public. But I've tried to align with the work we do there in risk management, so that for organizations it's not such a big gap between the different processes. So basically, the document describes a whole process of risk management. I also introduced the concept of threat modeling. And I know in the legal field it's a bit like, what is that? It sounds always like threat modeling is something super technical, and it's true that we use it a lot in security. But in privacy, it's something that for already many years had been already introduced by the framework Lintum, that I did myself later also with my framework Plot4AI. And it's simply a way of considering what can go wrong and a way to implement privacy by design. So by doing this in the different life cycle phases of the development of a system, it helps you to better think and become more aware of the different things that can go wrong during that phase. So yeah, I was in that sense really happy that I had the opportunity to bring to everybody the understanding of what is really threat modeling, how can you do it in a different phases, how can you identify the different risks, the importance of looking into the context of this technology, of looking into and also stakeholder analysis, who could be harmed by the technology, who could be the users, do a bit more deep analysis of these steps. That is something that I don't see happening in practice, but that are really important points to let us understand the different risks that could arise with the technology. And yeah, basically that was it. And I was a bit overwhelmed with all the feedback I got with the report from all different fields, especially of engineering fields, and it's yeah, overwhelming. Everybody really happy with it. I'm happy that I think I managed to make it comprehensive and practical guidance.
And speaking of reports that made a lot of people happy, because that's also been going along and a lot on LinkedIn, is another report that you also authored together with your colleague. And this was published a bit more recently. So it was published at the beginning of June. And it was a report similar in terms of content, because it was still about the idea of LLM risks, but this time, of course, the focus was different, because it was kind of committed by a different agency, and we are talking in this time from, like, it was asked from the Council of Europe. So we're talking firstly about the EDPB and the European Union. Now we're talking about the Council of Europe. Did you find the same kind of materials for the second report? Did you use the same approach? What did you focus on? What were the differences? And I mean, did you enjoy writing the second one as much as you enjoyed writing the first one then?
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing of the second one is that I didn't do it alone, but I have my colleague Muriela Fabre. So we are both as experts working for the Council of Europe for this specific assignment. And that is also nice because, yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I also like to work alone and do my analysis. But for instance, I must also say that for the work of the EDPB, one of the things I agreed is that I needed to have conversations and talk with also other experts. I mean, I don't want to pretend myself here I'm the expert in everything. It's true that I have a really mixed background. But that doesn't mean I know everything, and I really don't advise to anybody to pretend to be the expert in everything. It's really, in fact, really nice to talk to different people and learn from different people. And that is something that of course, I also did for my EDPB report. But here for the Council of Europe, the nice is that we were the two experts contracted for this assignment. So that's nice to work together and look at the two different perspectives. It is true that some things from the EDPB report are used in the Council of Europe report, but they have different approaches. So while the EDPB report was meant to be a proper guidance, and that was it, in the Council of Europe, what has been released until now, because everything is published on the website but has not been endorsed yet. It will be endorsed in a couple of weeks when the really, really final version will be published. This is more a proposal for the creation of guidance. For organizations, providers, deployers, to understand how to do risk management when developing LLM models, but also systems, and specifically focusing on Convention 108+ principles. So that is also important because it's not the same. The EDPB, like I mentioned before, Article 32, support for Article 35, and here we are focusing on really Convention 108+ principles. So what we try to to demonstrate in our proposal is that based on scientific background information, that it is eventually necessary to have some guidance on LLM risk management. So that's why in the report, of course, you see some similarities with the EDPB report, because the foundation of the technology, of data itself, how data is represented in models, the different threats that arise, and of course, it's much limited in this proposal of the Council of Europe, because it's a proposal, of course, it's not a complete guidance. And we aim to create a guidelines where this risk management framework is based on the different phases of the life cycle, and making really the important distinction between an LLM model and an LLM system, because they're often developed in a different way, parallel processes or not. And by justifying our proposal, what we did also was interview different stakeholders. And it's a pity I cannot mention all the different stakeholders we mentioned, because some of them, they wanted to be anonymous, and others didn't have the approval yet from management to be mentioned. But I can say that we talk from all type of institutions, like it is in the report, from big tech to startups, to researchers, to regulators. And that brought us a really good overview, and all this is in the report, as you can see there, of where the problematic is. And it's the common understanding was that yes, with some guidance specific for privacy risk management will really much more welcome. So Muriel and I had the pleasure to present this report the 17th of June in Strasbourg to the Committee of Convention 108, and after that, the result of the presentation was that it was voted that some guidelines will be built, and that will be the next steps. So asking what is gonna keep happening there. So we will keep researching, and we are gonna keep interviewing some other stakeholders. And eventually what we want is also to pilot, to be able to do some tests, to see kind of a trial and error, to see based on the frameworks that are there, and specifically, like I mentioned before, that some information from the EDPB report is taken as a baseline. So the framework in risk management that is there, and that is a really important foundation in this Council of Europe report. And those are the kind of tools that we wanna start testing and see what works, what doesn't work, and eventually come with a guidelines that is quite practical. Because now you see, I mean, risk management doesn't look so different if you look at different frameworks, but for LLM, based on the different benchmarks, evaluation methods, the way it's developed, especially the experimentation phase, that makes it really complicated, especially to be able to comply with the principles of the convention, as well as just with any privacy regulation requirements. Yeah.
Since I'm working in the privacy field, I will be curious to know better what is the relationship with Article 32 and 35 in the privacy risk management. Could you better explain how these two articles are related to the LLM's risk management?
Yeah, of course, if you look at Article 32, you are focusing on security risks. And if you look at Article 35, we're talking about the requirement for performance of the data protection impact assessment. As an impact assessment doesn't look only at security requirements. And that is, in fact, something, it's a nice question this that you ask, because it's something we also saw in our stakeholders interviews on the Council of Europe project, that there are many organizations that kind of mistake both. So they think, well, by applying security measures, I am done. So it's already data protection, right? So I don't have to worry anymore about that. But it's not sufficient. So of course it's necessary, and I will even say essential to look at security risks. But privacy goes beyond security. And apart from that article you mentioned about the difference with Article 35, when you perform data privacy impact assessments, you have other requirements, right? So looking at risks is only one part of it. Eventually, you have to do the whole impact assessment. You also question yourself other matters like the lawfulness. You eventually will go through Article 4, 5, 6. Eventually, to do your whole process of the pre-impact assessment and give answer to that, and looking at, for instance, the requirements of security will only be necessary if you know, well, basically you passed the test in the first phase, you know, the article. So yeah, it's important, but then I would say it's only related to the phase where you are really identifying risks, and then you go into the phase of doing your risk assessment and mitigating your risks. But it doesn't cover the whole process of DPIA. And absolutely not the obligation to perform a DPIA based on the different criteria from the GDPR, from the EDPB. So that's another story that of course has to be taken in account. So like I said, this complements. So Article 32 complements Article 35. And that will be also the purpose of this document from the EDPB, talking about that document.
And talking about risks, of course, you've encountered a variety of risks in both type of reports. Which ones do you think are most kind of urgent to solve? And how would you suggest that specific problems, for example, specific risks that are linked to the processing of personal data by LLMs should be targeted, and how, most importantly?
Yeah, I wish I would have answer for everything. But if I think, of course, a lot of different things can go wrong, and especially from the side of security, we see how things are getting. Basically, every week you see new attacks or new things, new issues happening. But one of the things I see, and that brings me also to the fact that we need to look beyond an LLM model and look at the whole infrastructure where this model is embedded. Is the fact of, how I would say this, to understanding where our data is going. So that is why in the EDPB report, I give a lot of importance to the data flow and to understand where the data goes, because I see that is one of the issues we have now. So looking only at data protection, that sometimes it's even hard for me, because when I work in the field of AI risk, I don't look only into privacy or security. I look much more beyond that and other type of risks. But when we focus only on privacy and data protection, I would say that understanding where your data is going, it's one of the most important, because that brings a lot of different other risks, from having your queries, your conversations stored in a database that is not properly protected, understanding that very often there's different layers built in an LLM system, because your queries need to be, your input needs to be also analyzed, as well as the output could be also analyzed for instance, for harmful content, and any other filter that you want to implement there. So those are a lot of measures that are used at this time to prevent safeguard, to prevent other type of risks. And then by understanding how the system works is that really helps you better have an eye of things that can go wrong there, and also what to require, especially if you are using a third-party application. They should comply with this or with that. So those are important things to understand from a data protection perspective. Other risks, well, of course, now we talk a lot about deepfakes. I think it has been now in the news that Denmark wanted to give copyright rights to everybody to protect from their own deepfakes. Well, I think that won't probably protect people from appear here and there at this moment, unless enforcement gets really serious. But yeah, of course, that is one of the issues that we have at this moment with this technology. And mitigations, yeah, I wish I would have mitigation for all of this. It's not like deepfakes is not a matter only of watermarking. I think I like always to relate this to the fact that we need education, not only AI. We talk about AI literacy, but it's not only about learning how technology works, but also about how technology affects you and affects others. I always say if you are able to feel how it could harm you, it will maybe help you to avoid to harm others, right? Because you know how does it feel. So I like if I'm with children of teenagers talking about this, using some role playing, this kind of games help to realize of what happens if this would happen to me. But yeah, I think raising awareness is one of the best things to do, and increasing enforcement, of course. And technically, we are still not there, unfortunately. So there's no solutions for everything. Of course, like I said, with the other issue of data, understanding where my data is, what is happening, if it's reused for training, if it's not properly stored. I mean, those are also standard security issues that you might have with any vendor, and you need to ask properly. And with some of them, yeah, you sometimes it's a matter of trust. You need to some organizations. That's also the thing. Right? If you're dealing with a big organization, they might have different certificates to demonstrate that they are doing everything properly according to certain audits, this and that. But you could, I don't know, ask a pen test and different requirements you might ask in your organization. But considering that in a lot of these organizations, providers that we are dealing now with are smaller companies, that is what become more tricky. And in that sense, yeah, I'm not so fan of like being in the beginning really strict with organizations and don't know well, but more giving a lot of guidance. So I think these organizations need to understand what are the steps, how you develop properly an application, how do you protect the data, how do you take care of the data of your users. And I hope that with guidance like the one of the EDPB can be helpful, of course, for some of these organizations. Yeah.
In terms of, as you talked about organizations and like the different steps and the different kind of number of let's say risk areas that there are within a single organization, if you had to suggest at which point of the use of LLM it's best to target the risks, where would you place this targeting? Because we know that like many LLMs are built by, for example, big American companies. They may be very far away from the end purpose of the LLM, and that can create a problem in accountability. So where would you place the risk management? Where is it best to target the risk?
Yeah, in fact, one of the things I advocate for is the life cycle approach in risk management. So that will mean that every different phase of the life cycle, you will need to apply risk management. But of course, it depends on the type of organization you are. So like you well mentioned, if you are an LLM model provider, and though still under some regulations, like with the AI Act, you are supposed to understand what are the intended purposes of your system and also misuse scenarios. So that means that for you as provider, you will still need to threat model the different scenarios and of use. But then again, your development life cycle or the life cycle of your AIs is maybe shorter, especially if you are just deploying a model and you don't embed it in a system. So it depends at which point in the life cycle of an AI system you are kind of acquiring that system, to put it like that. If you are like the beginner from the inception phase until the end, you will need to do risk management in any case in every phase of it. So you asked at which point is more important. I think one of the most important points is inception phase. So it's really the beginning when you will even ask yourself, do we really even need this application? Because and going from the idea that it's not only the provider of an LLM system, but let's go from the idea of a deployer. That's what we see now more nowadays. Organizations that just want to use an LLM system or build their own chatbot using an off-the-shelf LLM. So what? But the inception phase, the moment when you just you ask yourself, and not only yourself as talking about the ML engineer or just the technical team, but as organization. I mean, usually depends on the organizations, but there's like product owners, business owners. I mean, there's different people in our organization taking this type of decisions. But I always advise to have a broad and diverse meeting, and especially in the beginning phase, when you wonder yourself what things could go wrong in here, and is it really a good idea, and where are even the effects that this implementation could bring to us. I mean, I've seen cases where the idea of implementing certain technology could bring some extra load of work and that you couldn't cope with because you didn't have those resources. So, and then you don't think about that until it happens. So it's important to think: is this something we really need? What is the benefits we're going to have of it? And then thinking about all these, like I said, sort of threat modeling, thinking of the different things that could go wrong. I know for LLM providers, for many I've talked, it's in fact a really important phase to looking at the inception phase and thinking of the things that can go wrong. But what I see also in practice is that after that, it's like the questioning of what can go wrong and the different risks, it doesn't happen until basically the product is there. So and that's what I advocate for in my guidance. It's much better to do it at every phase. Your phase, I mean, because every organization has different phases. Doesn't have to be the ones from the ISO. Those are used as a reference. You might have 3 phases, 4 phases, no matter how. In general, we understand each other when we see the phases from ISO. We understand, okay, I call it in this way, but it's basically the same. If I call it data preparation or I call it data whatever, it's we understand each other. But it's important that at the different phases you question yourself those things. Now, again, this is not only a matter of questioning yourself what can go wrong. A lot of organizations they have a pipeline implemented where already different processes are being observed and solved. And so it's important to also mention that this is not only a question of sitting and discussing, that a lot of things are automated. And there's a lot of tools and ways to do this. Not everything can be automated, but a lot of it, yes. So it's just a matter of being aware of all the risks that could arise and sometimes implementing the right tools. So open source tools is also allowed. And yeah, I think, I don't know if that answered your question, but hope yes.
Yes, that was a great answer. And it really highlighted, I think, the difference in how AI is perceived, in a way, how LLMs are perceived as being a hype, something that everyone needs by definition, and the practicalities and kind of importance of understanding the costs and benefits of having them and implementing them. And some of the costs do have privacy and data protection as main title, in a way. So it is very important. How I think it was a great way to frame the answer, if I may. Our last question is kind of like always the same for all of our guests, and it is basically trying to look at what suggestions they could give us in terms of podcast, books, publications, readings that may help them understand this topic better. But our listeners already have 2 reports to read that have been published and produced by you. So my last question is going to be a tiny bit different, which is, given that they have to read the reports as we have, and I really know they will enjoy them as much as we have, what kind of future do you see this reporting trajectory having? What would you like to research on next?
That's a really good question. Well, of course, my work for the Council of Europe will continue. So I will continue with Muriel researching on privacy risks and like I said before, interviewing some stakeholders, trying to pilot a framework. But yeah, besides that, I'm myself doing some other type of research too. So I'm finalizing. It's also mentioned in the EDPB report, by the way, one of my frameworks that I call FRASP. That is a framework on it says severity and probability assessment of inferences of fundamental rights. So what I did was create a criteria for this assessment so that it's a bit less kind of subjective. And that based on some other research that is there, I'm sort of finalizing this framework, so that will be also soon published, because yeah, what I used for the EDPB report was part of my research, but like the paper is not published yet. Yeah, another thing I keep doing research is in risks in general, AI risks. And for that, I think if you look into my Plot for AI framework, so I don't know if you put links there, it's plot4.ai. But this is a threat modeling library of risks that I published, well, in fact, in the beginning in 2022, after 3 years of research, and piloting also in an organization in the Netherlands, in fact, in one of the tax office. So that was a really good place to test it, to start with. And now in 2025, in fact, when was that again? I think beginning of June. I don't even know anymore. I've been so busy the last weeks, but I published a new update. And so it's like that the version 2 has been released and it has increased a lot. So it's so for your listeners to understand what is Plot for AI. It's a library of risks of AI, and it's a taxonomy. So maybe some of you also know the one of MIT, of the Massachusetts Institute, that is a list of different AI risks. That one is it contains, I don't know, 1,000 something risks, and is, yeah, it has been more based on a lot of research. So if you look at that, it's a more of a kind of academic way of looking at risks. That's more the way to say it. So some of the risks are really similar, and they need. Yeah, eventually, I know the colleagues there are working on to make it a bit more practical, and that would be, in that sense, the difference with Plot for AI. Of course, Plot for AI is older because, like I said, I published it in 2022, and it contains at that time 86 different risks or sources of risks, and I classified in 8 different categories every risk. And now in the new update, there's 138 risks and still the 8 categories, but they have been also updated. So you have risk related to, of course, cybersecurity and also data privacy and data protection, but also ethics and human rights, risks related to data governance, risks related to safety and environmental impact. So like that, there's 8 different categories. And what is nice, I think also as lecture, because by reading Plot for AI, you learn a lot about AI from a technical and organizational perspective, because you see eventually it's a sort of a game for threat modeling. So every risk has a question. That's what you ask when you are in a team about, can this go wrong? And by answering yes or no, or I don't know, the game already tells you, well, that you might be at risk, so you might have to do something about that. But if you turn the card, so it gives you explanations, it gives you recommendations to solve the issue. And all this is based on a lot of research papers where you can see the references in the Plotfree website. And there's already more than 400 references, and of course also my expertise from all these years. So that's, I think, really, really nice source of knowledge, to put it like that, for learning from a, like I said, from a more diverse perspective about different things that can go wrong with AI. Some more legal perspective, other much more technical perspective, others a governance perspective. So that might be an interesting reading. And of course, it's open source and it's community driven. So maybe this is now a bit of a call to action here to take the opportunity that whoever that wants to contribute through GitHub or just sending an email like, hey, I have a new risk threat. I don't get now into the discussion if it's a threat, if it's a risk. I mean, some are just sources of risk, but it's a methodology called threat modeling. That's why we call it threats. But some of them are not proper threats, are more sources of risk. Anyways, this is really more, this is really deep risk management discussion, so no need to get into that here now. But in any case, if you think, hey, I know a new source, I don't know, I've read a paper that could be interesting here, or a new mitigation measure for this risk, or I know a new risk that should be mentioned. Yeah, you can just collaborate, and it would be really, really helpful for the community.
Perfect. Then our listeners will definitely find the link in the show notes and on LinkedIn post that will go with this interview. And I really, really hope everyone will engage in the reading and perhaps in the signaling, because it's very important that communities kind of act together to find the best suit to regulating AI, LLMs, and well, anything that will come afterwards, because, you know, we live in very interesting times.
Exactly. And Plotfree is not only for LLMs, it has to be clear, it's a framework for just AI in general. Though if you look at the instructions, you see that some risks are only specific for generative AI. Because yeah, it is like that. And now everybody talks about generative AI and LLMs, but AI is much more than that, and has been used for many, many years already. So it's something that we should not, lose from the eye. There's so much technology, like recommended systems, other technologies just built with the classifier models. So it's important to think that it's not all LLMs. That's just a part of it. It's more the hype now. But, it's much more than that.
An anchor to the ground today with Isabel Barberà. Thank you so much for coming
You're
here
welcome.
at distance, but still. And
Yeah.
this was a great pleasure, and felicitaciones for your new job.
Yeah, thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
This was all with my colleague here, Giacomo. Thanks, Giacomo, for joining me.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Isabel.
It was a great pleasure.
A pleasure. Thank you.